Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek program at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum, and today we are in the White Garden because there's a big, beautiful Fatsia right here, as well as, within spitting distance, there are an elephant in the room, we shall say. We'll get to it. We've got a program for you today. We've got our director, Mark, here. We're going to be talking about Fatsia and friends, a bunch of hardy plants in the genus Araliaceae, which can really give your garden that nice tropical look, even if you are in temperate climates as we are. So it should be a really brilliant program. Those of you joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I will pass things over to Mark to tell us all about Fatsia and their friends.
All right, thank you, Blake. Welcome everybody and Happy New Year. Hope it's going to be a great one for all of y'all. It is our 50th anniversary, so we're really looking at our programming this year, and we've got all kinds of great stuff happening. So make sure you follow along with on our website and our YouTube channel and other ways of communicating with you. And if you're joining us and you're not a member or you haven't signed up, you can go to our website and get signed up for an email that comes out about once a week that just tells what's upcoming for you, called our cuttings, and that'll keep you up to date with all of our programs, which is a great way to be. So today I'm talking about one of my favorite groups of plants, which also has some of my least favorite plants in the family. We put it as Fatsia and friends because we didn't think people wanted all about Araliaceae as a title.
I love the alliteration, though.
I'm all about the alliteration in my titles. The Aralia family is this really widespread family. Basically, it grows everywhere except for in the very coldest areas. Well, no, it'll grow in pretty cold areas as well. So I don't even want to put that on there. So it grows in the Americas, Central, South America, Caribbean, Europe, Asia, Africa, the Pacific Islands, New Zealand, and Australia. In fact, in New Zealand, it's one of the real iconic plants there is in this family. They are trees and shrubs usually. They are vines, not terribly rarely, quite a lot of vines. And there's some herbaceous plants as well in there, but not many herbaceous, non-woody plants. The family, Araliaceae, one of those families that I have a hard time pinpointing how to exactly identify it, although I often can identify it when I see it. The fruits are the easiest way. This is a Fatsia fruit. And most of the Araliaceae will have these umbels or round clusters of flowers and fruit that are really indicative of the family. Some are a little bit different, but for the most part, you get these, and they can be red or black when they ripen up, depending on the plant. So that's one way, if it's in flower or fruit, to identify it. They're usually opposite leafed, but not necessarily. And then it gets more difficult to identify them. We grow out of the 46 or so genera of plants in the Aralia family. We grow about 12. Well, we grow 12 intentionally. One of those herbaceous ones is hydrocotyle or pennywort, the real little creeping round kind of leafed plant that creeps along. That's a lawn weed and a garden, weed. That's in the family as well. So that one we don't have accession, so we don't count it, but we probably have some of it some places here. Altogether, with cultivars and different selections, we have 52 different ones here, different Araliaceae here. So since we're calling this Fatsia and friends, I'm going to start with Fatsia, which is absolutely one of my favorite plants. When these things are all little white flowers in the fall, it's absolutely beautiful. And then they become all little black Sputnik like guys coming into spring. It really, in my mind, extends the season. And as you might probably can see behind me, it's beautiful evergreen plants. So you got it all winter long. So let's talk about Fatsia. The typical species form of Fatsia looks like this. Leaves can get quite big. The petioles can get quite long. That's, 18, 20 inches of petiole in there, or leaf stalk. Real easy plants to grow, easy to root. You can lop off a big old thick branch, stick it in a 1 gallon container, keep it moist, and that sucker will root for you and you'll have a plant. You would see them in nurseries more often than you do, and for cheaper prices, if there was a lot to cut on the plant. And if it grew faster. So one of the problems with Fatsia from a nurseryman's perspective is you've got this plant, you don't have many places to take cuttings. So each year you can only take a handful of cuttings that you root. And then they only will flush and grow once per year. So they'll flush and grow, and then that's it for that year. And the next year they'll flush and grow, and that's it for that year. So for a nurseryman who needs to sell a big full plant, they're slow and can be, that's expensive to produce. For a plant that is super easy to produce, it is expensive because it takes an extra year or 2 years to have a really good plant. So I always tell people, if you really want this, go to like Master Gardener and Gardener Club sales. They often will have them. It'll usually be one stalk in a pot, probably not terribly tall, but you get that and it'll flush out every year. But they make nice big evergreen plants. Now it looks like something, when you got a mature one, like this one that's back behind me, they look like they're pretty quick, vigorous growing plants because they have those big leaves, they have stout stems. I have made the mistake of cutting them back hard, and it takes years for them to recover from that. They get that one flush. There are some old selections around. This is one that's just called variegata, that's got irregular white splashes, mostly on the tips of the lobes. So Fatsia japonica variegata. There's another one that you can find sometimes in garden centers that's sold as camouflage. Its real name is Murakumo Nishiki. But Fatsia japonica, there aren't. And then there's one called spiderweb, where all the veins are white on there. It's a really beautiful plant. If you buy spiderweb, plant labeled as that, it will often be very green. It responds best to low fertility. So in the nursery, they want it to grow as quick as possible. So they put fertilizer on it, and you'll get it, it'll be mostly green. Put it in the ground, don't fertilize it, and then usually 2 years, it's really starting to show off. But you don't often see these really, this variegata. In fact, a friend of mine here in Raleigh sent me a text once about 6 months ago and said, hey, at the farmer's market, somebody's got variegated Fatsia for $29.99.
Ooh.
And so I went down and bought two for myself.
Right.
I bought two, one for me, one for the Arboretum. But the Arboretum already had a couple, so I kept both of them for myself. Now, that's really the only species you see is Fatsia japonica that you see often. There is another species. There's actually 2, maybe 3 other species. There's the Taiwan form called Fatsia polycarpa. Now, this is one we named Jade Dragon. The Fatsia polycarpa is not always as serrate and as deeply incised. It can be a little bit closer to the Fatsia japonica, but you can see quite a big difference between these two. Fatsia polycarpa is not as hardy, as cold hardy as Fatsia japonica, but it grows much faster and flushes multiple times a year. As far as I know, they've never been crossed, but that's something that we'd like to do because it'd be nice to get cold hardiness of Fatsia japonica, the toughness, into a plant with these more dissected leaves that flushes multiple times and is makes for a more affordable plant to grow. I think nurserymen would really like that because Fatsia japonica is just such a tough plant. Sun, shade, terrible soils. It really will tolerate just about any of that. Now, there's another species called Fatsia oligocarpella, which only comes from a couple of the deep south Japanese islands, ones where there are very few, if any, people living on them. We actually got one. As soon as I realized there was a third species, I searched it out. I found it was growing at a garden in Hawaii. That was the only garden around the world that the Botanic Gardens Congress International's plant search had it. And I immediately went and tried to see if they would send it. They did. It's great. The great garden in Hawaii. They've been very generous with a couple of different plants with us. There's no way it was going to grow here. So while I wanted it here, we don't just grow plants in our nursery, in our greenhouse, just to have them. So we sent it down farther south where it had more of a chance. So hopefully it'll grow. But I said 3, maybe 4 species, and that's because we grow this plant as well. Now, this plant has not been very cold hardy, and it's a little bit puny in our gardens, except for, look at that leaf. That's a huge leaf. And the parent plant of this, where we got the seed, was growing in a garden in Cornwall, and they were kind of tongue-in-cheek calling it Mega Fatsia. And the leaves, and I measured them, were 28 inches across.
Oh, wow.
I mean, huge compared to a regular Fatsia. And they were saying it was Fatsia polycarpa, but it looks nothing like Fatsia polycarpa.
No kidding.
And it doesn't look like Fatsia japonica. It's much thinner textured, much less glossy, looks completely different. And we think maybe in southern Taiwan, this is perhaps a different species of Fatsia that hasn't been really evaluated and named yet. So when you press these specimens and you have flat specimens and you have the flowers are all very similar and the fruits are all very similar, sometimes it can be hard to tell the difference. But when you see them in growth, when you see them when they're still fresh, it can make a big difference in what you really see with that plant. So we think there may be a fourth species that would, be a little bit different. This, what we're currently calling Fatsia polycarpa situ giant, because it comes from a region called Situ in Taiwan, is proving to be not very cold hardy. So we don't have nice big plants. They haven't flowered yet, so we can't really look at the flowers. We can't cross them, but it's an interesting thing, at least, especially if you live in the deep south.
For sure. So, Mark, Theo had an interesting question. You mentioned how difficult it is to not difficult to propagate Fatsia, just from a space perspective. Theo was wondering, can you propagate Fatsia from the seeds/berries?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Fatsia is easy to grow from seed. It doesn't pop up in the garden, which is nice, but yeah, you can gather ripe seed when the flesh turns purple. Just sow it right away and it'll pop up. You could probably store it in a refrigerator for some months if you wanted, but I'd just sow it right away. And in fact, very weird thing with the one called spiderweb that has the veins are white. That should in no way come true from seed, but it pretty much comes 100% true from seed.
Nice. That's amazing.
So yeah, that's one. It's still, you get the one flush a year.
Yeah,
problem.
right.
so you don't get big plants quickly. Sure. And that's, while it's easy to do, if a nursery has to grow a plant, say a 3-gallon plant for 4 or 5 years, that's a long time.
Sure.
And so you don't see them doing it that much.
Definitely. Nancy had a question.
Yeah.
She says that she has 2 japonicas that she planted years ago, and she's getting a couple of reseeding. So she's got a couple little baby plants, and she wants to know how they would do if she dug them up and potted them.
Oh, they'd be fine.
Okay. They do well in containers?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a time of year when you can do anything to a plant, really, and it'll just be like, oh, well, I'm asleep. So go for it.
Go for it. Yeah, they're tough plants. I've literally seen in Japan where they were taking stems of Fatsia japonica and sticking them in the ground, like very close together. It was kind of beside a highway. There was an overpass, so it was shaded. I assume it'll get some water, or they'll water them. I assume there was enough space, but they were just sticking them straight in the ground and watering them in and allowing them to root in place and become this dense hedge on the side of the road.
Brenda wants to know if the fruit can be used for anything. I mean, besides plant propagation.
I've never heard of people eating or doing anything like that with the fruit.
Yeah, and we wouldn't recommend trying it either.
Yes. Yes. Birds certainly will eat some berries of some Araliaceae, which brings us to, we started with good. We'll go to bad, not necessarily ugly, but bad. This is the most common of the Araliaceae in gardens and other places around here, and this is Heterohelix, or English ivy. This is a form called glacier, which has a white edge to the leaf. There's another one called cream de menthe that looks very similar. There's probably about 20 more that look almost identical. English ivy is very, very prone to having sports and variegations on a little branch, and since it propagates so easy, you get more and more and more.
For sure, and they do well as houseplants too, so it doesn't matter where you live, you can keep them. Exactly.
But they have become a problem in the U.S. When grown outdoors. You can grow them as a houseplant and they're fine. What you get is plants with kind of this tripartite kind of leaf. And then as they age, and this is actually a different species, this is Heterocolchica, but you'll start to get them, they'll start to lose those little points on the side and get more of this entire shape. And that's when they're becoming mature. And you'll see that if you look at a ivy growing up a wall or a tree, they'll be very much like this on the ground where they're spreading, and then those leaves will become more triangular or even just oblong as it goes up. And when they start doing that, that means they're getting mature, and they'll start flowering and fruiting.
Yes.
Which, great, we love our plants to fruit usually, except the birds love these and they spread them all over the place. And it really has become a problem planting in our woodlands. And it's funny, people are concerned about it because it spreads as a ground cover, and it's still sold as a good ground cover for shade. It
loves the shade and it covers the ground.
Exactly. But really, that's not the problem with it spreading on the ground, because that's limited in what it can do. It's that the birds eat it and they move it. If something you plant it and it spreads out, but it stays in that spot, okay. But the birds getting the berries and moving them makes it a problem. So we do not recommend you planting English ivy or the Heterocolchica or...
Yeah. Well, we've got English ivy here. Is there something that we do to prevent it from spreading around like that?
No, but it is one of those ones that we really is on the list of things that we need to eradicate from the garden. We've worked at we have some adult ones which form nice shrubs. They don't spread out unless they start spreading out. But those are mature when they make a shrub like that, and so they do flower and fruit. And really, they're all on the chopping block for us.
Sure.
It can be difficult to get rid of English ivy. The best way to do it is to pull it out by hand.
Yikes.
Which can be difficult, but it's not that bad. I've pulled out large areas of it. When it gets real thick, it can get tough.
Sure.
But you pull it out as best you can, and then go in and spray it with a glyphosate or some other herbicide when it starts flushing back out. We find that the best time to do that is in the spring when the leaves come up and are about as big as your thumbnail or so, the newest leaves. You spray it, and then you wait about 10 days and you spray it again. It'll sometimes take 3 sprays, again, waiting another 10 or so days, 10 days, 2 weeks, and spraying it again. But that really will get most of it. Now, there's gonna be some things that haven't flushed back out, some things from the roots, and you just have to stay on top of it until it's dead. If you leave it for 2 years, you're going to come back and it's going to be like it was when you started. So if you just stay on top of it for a year, you can eradicate it relatively easily.
Nice. Jared wants to know if anybody's done any breeding work around English ivy to make them sterile or non-flowering in the hopes of reducing its spreadiness.
I don't know if anybody has done that. It takes some time because it has that juvenile phase. So breeding-wise, that takes some time. It's actually not a bad idea. There is a lot of work in breeding sterile forms of plants that are otherwise invasive.
Like the sunshine ligustrum.
They're doing it with barberries, all kinds of plants. And it's usually by making them triploid. They take a plant that has the 2 sets of chromosomes, and they artificially, through chemical means, double that, so they have a plant with 4 sets of chromosomes.
Okay.
When you breed 4 sets of chromosomes and 2 sets of chromosomes, you get 3 sets of chromosomes, and those don't like to flower generally, so or at least form seed.
Yeah.
So that's what's been done with butterfly bush and a lot of these plants. Now, in terms of breeding with Hedera, there is a plant, and I didn't bring a cutting of it because it just didn't look very good in the garden right now, called Hedera, which is Fatsia crossed with Hedera, and it makes a kind of sprawling shrub. If they're used right, they're beautiful. If not, they're just kind of gangly things in the garden, but they can be really, really pretty. As far as I know, that cross has only been made one time.
Okay.
And so it would be interesting to try to do some crosses with these plants with other genera or types of things in there.
No kidding.
Now, a plant that is not common here, but should be more common, well, it's used in Japan quite a bit, is an evergreen tree called Dendropanax trifidus, or trifidus.
Why not? Tomato.
Yeah, and trifidus sounds like the Triffids on Star Trek.
Right?
I don't think that's what it's named for. Now, it's an interesting plant. It's called Trifidus because it's got these 3 lobes on the leaves when it's young. When it gets older, it loses those lobes. And this is just like that ivy. This happens in a lot of plants in the Araliaceae family. If they're not compound leaved, they will do this. They'll go from lobe to simple. And you can see, I took this cutting this morning here in the garden, and you can see kind of, it's not like sassafras. You don't usually get these mitten-shaped ones, but you can see it going from the 3-lobe to single lobe all in the same plant. And for a while you'll get both, but eventually it'll go till just all of these simple leaves on the whole plant. But it makes a tree, it can be, and I've seen them maybe 15 or 20 feet tall, dense evergreen plants. Small trees limbed up, beautiful, beautiful specimens, and see them used, kind of like, I've seen them at the entryways to, doorways, and I don't know why they're not more used. They grow in shade, they grow in sun. They're a little more open in the shade than the really dense in the sun. But I think they're gorgeous trees, and we just don't grow them enough. Sometimes they're called tree ivies, and I think that turns people off.
Okay.
So if we just call them dendropanics, I always say if you put panics at the end of anything, then I'm on board. Which, incidentally, panax is ginseng.
Huh.
And so that's in this family as well. So staying on the panax route, another plant, and I will say the Dendropanax trifidus is solid zone 7 at least hardy. It may be 6B hardy. It's really tough. This is a metapanax. This is one called Metapanax delavei, named for Father Delavay, who did a lot of plant collecting while he was trying to convert people in China. This is a shrub, a multi-stemmed shrub that has these compound leaves, these little leaflets in there. Really beautiful thing. Some of these forms will turn just deep purple in the garden. Deep, deep purple during winter, which is really pretty. My plant at home, for whatever reason, when deer get into my garden, they love to rub on this plant, and they have butchered it a bunch of times, which doesn't hurt the plant, really. You can whack on these, cut them, whatever, and they're fine. Metapanax delavei is really a zone 7B plant. Really, it's 8A, 7B. It's not for terribly cold climates. It can get hit pretty hard here for us. It's got a kind of a wide distribution, so I would imagine that there are forms which are going to be more cold hardy than others. Some are going to be much more tropical. So, but we don't have locations for many of these where they originated from. So that's something that would be helpful if people are going to China and places to look for ones that are at higher elevations or more northerly latitudes. There is another species called Metapanax davidii, named for Father David. He was French. Father David, if you pronounce it like a true Southerner here, me. That has a wider leaf. It's kind of similar, but it's a much wider leaf, and that's even less cold hardy. That's really a zone 8 plant, and we've lost it here on more than one occasion. As an aside, at my house, because I'm a big plant nerd, I have all my beds named so that I know that something's in this bed or that bed.
Yeah.
And they're mostly named after plant explorers.
Okay.
So my brother, David Weathington, came over and he saw the bed that was labeled, because I'm a super plant nerd, the David bed, and he was very excited that I named a bed after
You're such
his.
a sweet brother.
Yes. I did not disabuse him of that notion. All right. Now we're getting into some that I really love. This is a group that I first learned about here at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum before I started working here. So, if you're like me, you may have grown up in a house with a Schefflera or an umbrella plant that was not getting enough light and was all lanky and windy and kind of funky. And it was a house plant and you didn't think much about it. Well, I came to a talk here and a symposium, and somebody was showing pictures of Scheffleras from China and Vietnam that they said were cold hardy. And I said, no way, I must have them. And it took me years and years to get them. And by the time I got them, they had changed their name from Schefflera to Heptaplorum. The Asian ones are Heptaplorum. The ones from America, the Americas, are still Schefflera. And then there's some other oddball ones from other places that are truly tropical. So the most cold hardy form species that we found is one called Schefflera delavei. So much like the Metapanax Delaveyi for Father Delaveyi. And it makes a medium-sized tree, but with these big tropical leaves. You know, we've gotten pretty cold here already this winter. This is from my home garden. We're growing this at the Arboretum, or I should say we have this at the Arboretum. Our plant here at the Arboretum has not wanted to grow. It has stayed the same size for years, it seems like.
Jeez.
I do have another form of it
Well now.
that has these serrations to it. I really thought by now it would have lost the serrations. I thought it would be like some of these other plants that would go from serrated to entire. What we found mostly with these Heptaplurum delaveyi forms is that the cut leaf ones are not nearly as cold hardy as the entire leaf ones. But this has been growing great in my garden, and this just happened to be a very good seedling. We had a bunch of seedlings from Atlanta Botanic Garden, from their wild collected ones, and when they were little seedlings, we had a whole bunch. We sold them, distributed them, gave them away probably. I just happened to take 3 home, and one of them turned out to be this really nice form.
No kidding.
Now again, like Fatsia, there isn't a whole lot to cut on these things, and they tend to grow with a single trunk, and it'll be a stout trunk, and they'll leaf off, and it'll look big. I've got plants that are 6 feet wide, but they're 6 feet wide because they're like this. And it's really just this one stout stalk. And so to propagate it, you got to lop the top off of that thing. And that's difficult to do.
It hurts your soul.
And then when you do that, it'll branch out. I do sometimes try and nick the plant on the side a little bit. Not enough to really hurt the plant, but enough to maybe stop all those nutrients that are going up and at where the bud is. So scratch it right above where a bud is and get a little bit growing there. And so sometimes that works. I saw the prettiest one ever in Cornwall. Again, Cornwall. It had petioles, leaf stalks that were easily 3 feet long.
Wow.
And they were bright pink.
Whoa.
Oh. It was so cool. So this is really a nice hardy plant. We've grown it from seed. Actually, our plant here came from seed that I brought with me from the last garden I worked at when I started here. And we distributed a whole bunch of it. Our attempts to grow it from seed since then, we get them up, they grow, and then we get what we call damping off. They get a fungal disease. So really they need some good air movement, a fan or something to keep water from sitting on those young stems. So in my quest to find more Heptaplurums, we got this from our good friends at Far Reaches Farms Nursery in Washington State. When we got it, we did not know what species it was. We just had it as Schefflera NV607, I think. 067. Now we have it as Heptaplurum, but we've also figured out that it is, oh gosh, I always forget which one it is. If it's Brevipedicillata, Brevipedicillatum. So it has a short pedicel, which is the flower stalk, which, you know, are little tiny umbels anyway. This is a plant from my garden. We killed it here, which sometimes happens. I've got mine in a very protected spot, but mine has set seed this year.
Ooh.
So it's still ripening. I'm going to be bringing in a whole bunch of seed. So this may be something that we have that we'll have available to get to folks. I've had this in my garden since 2019, so it has been good and hardy. So this Brevipedicillatum has been a relatively small plant. It's probably 5 feet tall now. It's got that same single trunk on it. So that's why we haven't propagated it. I haven't been able to bear the idea of chopping the top off. But it has been good and hardy for us. This does something that some of these Scheffleras do. There's another one that we collected in China called Minuta stellata that did the same thing, and it'll have this Let me see if I can show you this. The whorl of leaves like this, these leaves, and then another whorl that kind of comes up from the center. And I think it just gives it, when it's on the tree, it gives it this really full leafy look. That's really kind of elegant. I like it. Hopefully y'all can kind of get a sense of that.
For sure.
But it's a neat thing. Now we're still trying new ones. This is one we've just gotten. This is from very South China, and it will probably not survive our winters here. But we don't know that. So we're gonna try. And what we do with these, when we have plants like this that we're really uncertain if they're gonna survive here, we'll grow them relatively large. We'll get them to be a good, decent size. Ideally by then we've propagated them. You can see some little leaves down here that are growing out. We hope these will form little stems right here as well. It looks like this one at least is going to. And then we'll propagate it, but we'll grow this pretty good size till it has a, an inch or so diameter trunk, give it the best chance possible. Then we'll plant it in early spring so that once the ground has warmed up to say 50 or so degrees, and that'll give it the most time to establish, the best opportunity to really get going. And those who know me I always say, plant things small, plant things small, plant things small. But sometimes with these woody things that are not quite hardy, giving them size for that, their cold tolerance really helps. We do the same thing with our palms and cycads and things. So we're not sure what species this is yet. The leaf looks a little bit wide to be Schefflera bodneri, but there are so many out there that we're still just learning these. And who knows, it may prove to be the hardiest of them all. You never know until you grow the plant.
No kidding.
Okay. Now, I've been to Taiwan multiple times collecting plants, collected Schefflera or Heptaplurum taiwaniana, and have killed it. That actually is one that grows at around 9,000 feet. And it's fine during our winters.
No kidding.
The summers kill it because it's growing in these really cool summer conditions, high elevations in Taiwan. And we've collected that and we've grown that multiple times and never have kept it alive. But there was another Araliaceae there that we've seen a couple times. But these Aralias, they flower in the fall and form fruit over winter. And when most fruit is formed is going to be late summer into fall.
Right.
And that's when I go, because it's hard to go in spring just for a few plants. And there's a plant called Cynopanax formosanus that I lusted on over. And finally got the plant. And it's got these kind of almost sycamore-like leaves. This one actually, it should have a tip on there. The tip got broken off or misformed early in the season, but I didn't want to take off a better leaf off the plant. Again, that single big fat trunk that it makes it difficult to do a lot of propagation on. But it's got this kind of nice, it's a different color green than a lot of other things, almost blue-green when the light hits it right.
No kidding. And the backside's got that nice.
Has this nice indumentum, this little fuzz on the back here that's just really attractive in the plant.
No kidding.
Struggled to grow it for many years, but finally have one going, and we'll hopefully be able to propagate and distribute this a little bit. This grows at that Goldilocks elevation in Taiwan, takes heat, takes cold. We really haven't had any kind of problems with it. We'll see. We haven't had it in real cold yet, but so far it seems to be doing very, very well. But boy, I saw it in 2008 for the first time and didn't really get it growing until 2022. Now, we'll mention, got a couple other plants here that there are a lot of other ones, and I mentioned that most of them are tropical. This is Brasseopsis, Not sure of the species. And this is an Oreopanax. And you can see they look kind of like a Schefflera. The Dendropanax is from Vietnam. This is one we collected in Vietnam, fruit that we collected. Get that ugly leaf off of there. You can always tell Brasseopsis because they have spines on the stems. And as they get big, they get to be vicious suckers. This one, I almost lost my life with this one because when I went to grab some fruit off of it, it was loaded with fruit. We only got one plant out of it. But when I went to grab it, one of our guides stopped me and pointed to this huge poisonous snake that was curled up around there.
Oh, whoa.
Just hanging down. But cool plant. We doubt it'll be hardy. I do have a Dendropanax growing in a very protected spot. And I've had questions about this. Sometimes I talk about I have something growing or I have it in my garden. Often when I purchase plants, if they are expensive plants and I really don't think there's a good chance of them surviving, I will get them with my own money and grow them at my house. And then if they survive, I will propagate them and bring them into the Arboretum.
Nice.
But I like to be very careful with the Arboretum's money. So that's why sometimes I have things at my house because I don't like to waste Arboretum's money. I'll waste my money. My wife doesn't watch these, so I can say that. This is a Oreopanax. Another one. Like I said, I'm a sucker for anything with panax. Marillopanax, and there's all kinds of them. Pseudopanax. This is actually from Costa Rica. Again, almost certainly not hardy. But we'll grow this up and we will try it outside and we will watch it die almost certainly. And, if it survives, it survives. We'll be very excited. But, you don't know until you kill the plant what it'll do. We've got plants from Guatemala and Ecuador and all kinds of places. So we don't trust the experts. So there's a whole other group, lots of other plants in the Araliaceae family, relatives of Fatsia. The deciduous ones, I just didn't go over here because I would be showing you sticks. But things like there's Eleutherococcus and some other plants like that are in the family that we do grow. There's some beautiful variegated Eleutherococcus, but they don't give that tropical look. They don't scratch that tropical itch for me. So do we have any other questions?
Yeah, for sure. So Judy was wondering if Fatsia polycarpa can overwinter in Central Virginia, Zone 7B.
7B, you're going to be touch and go with Fatsia polycarpa.
Okay.
Typically, at least Jade Dragon, we have lost a lot. Jade Dragon has been the most reliable for us. That's why we named it. It has been the best. Spring Meadow, Proven Winners, I think it's through Proven Winners, has released a Fatsia polycarpa. They've named one, I can't remember the name, but they've released a Fatsia polycarpa that they say is a good solid 7B.
Okay.
So you're going to be seeing Fatsia polycarpa in garden centers all over in the next year or two, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's an exciting plant for sure. Okay, we can keep it in the same vein because Jared is wondering, as a zone pusher, he has to ask, have you heard any of the higher elevation or higher latitude collections of Fatsia that may be hardier than the typical species?
So there's an old cultivar of Fatsia japonica called Moseri, Moseri, that is supposed to be more cold hardy.
Okay.
I can't vouch for that, and it's hard to find.
Sure.
We tracked it down to the National Arboretum.
Okay.
And got a plant.
Nice. Okay, so a little bit of a treasure hunt for you there, Jared. But I mean, he's a zone pusher, so that's part of the fun, is the adventure.
That is, yeah. One of the nice things about the Fatsia polycarpa because it does flush more, it grows into a plant bigger. And if you protect that crown, if you go in there, and what I like to use, if you throw mulch down on like the crown of a woody plant, it's easy to rot it out over the winter. But if you go in with like pine branches or things like that and lay those, you get the air, which is great insulation, just like your down coat or your, you know, parka. You get the air, but also it kind of holds it in there. So if you do that, it allows it to dry out in there, and then it's real easy to pull out in the spring when things warm up. So then even if your top dies, you may keep that base going. And I think you'd be better off doing that with polycarpa than with japonica, even in a colder spot.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're definitely going to rot a crown out with you're shoving dirt up against it, but that's a really great tip for any kind of zone pushing. Really, that's awesome. Suzanne did want to know how far apart are the leaves on the heptaplurum, like the internodal distance?
Well, it really depends on the plant. They grow kind of like this, where they'll be very close together. You can see, I think, these are very, very close, but as it gets older and stretches, they'll be farther apart. And some of them, the bigger ones like Delavei, you'll get that kind of whorl that's close together, and then it really flushes out, and they'll be spaced out, and then the next year you'll have that whorl that's close together, and then you get that flush of growth that spaces them out, and they keep kind of doing that. When they form their terminal bud in late summer, they usually kind of stop elongating, and you'll get a whorl right there. So,
okay, yeah, well, a real nice dramatic effect, nice bushy, lots of pretty leaves.
Yeah,
cool. Well, that is all of the questions that we had for today. So thank you so much, Mark, for pulling all this together and sharing us all of Fatsia's friends with us. Yeah,
and look for Heptaplurum brevipediculatum potentially for being offered by the Arboretum in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. That'll be something to look forward to. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Midweek program. Thank you, everybody that joined us live. And thank you, everybody that watched to the end on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you like this video. Go ahead and leave a comment that's just an emoji of a plant, just for the sake of engagement. Honestly, we appreciate all of it. We will be back next week. We will be watching the recording of the Plant Lovers Tour that Mark just did, going through the top 10 plants that built the Arboretum. It was a dynamite tour. You're definitely going to want to join us for that one. So we will see you all next time. Y'all take care.